David Eagleman is a neuroscientist. I logged on to his podcast, and he had on a guest he was talking to about supernatural, who made some statements that I would like to take my hand at trying to address. I'm going to sample the video and show you up to the point where the guest makes the comment, and from right there, I'm going to stop it, and I'm going to venture an explanation that he says really can't be made.
Okay, so Bruce, you've been intrigued by supernatural thinking. People often believe things that defy rationality. So let's start with some examples of that.
So there's the familiar ones of ghosts and spirits, which, form the basis of a lot of storytelling in our culture. But I'm also interested in the more obscure things like the rituals that people often engage in, that they might have special things that they do. Sports rituals, I think, are fascinating, that people have to touch certain things or wear certain clothes. And then there are more obscure things like the sense of being stared at. Most people think they can tell where they're being watched. And that's an interesting one, because that doesn't sound supernatural to a lot of people. But when you consider it from a scientific perspective, then it's not really easy to understand how that could be done by any natural process. So really, it's all those sorts of things which, in the cold light of day, and you look at them through the scrutiny of a scientific lens, don't stand up. So anything like that is in the category.
And when you look at things like that, you realize, wow, this actually cuts across cultures, and as far as we can tell, across time as well, right? Everybody seems to do this.
Yes, and that's exactly one of the interesting things, which suggests it might be universal. Whenever you find aspects of human behavior in different cultures, that strongly suggests that it might be something to do with our biology rather than being entirely culturally specific.
Supernatural, how does it work, and why does it defy explanation? Why does it defy the capacity to interact with it at will? The things that happen that appear to us to be supernatural happen randomly. And if we try to pursue it, we can't make it happen. What is there? What is hiding from us? Why does that work? Sometimes, but mostly not. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the video. All right, so I am going to talk about a theory, and this is going to be science. Things happen sometimes. I remember as a 9 to almost 10-year-old boy hearing in my head, Larry's dead. My brother Larry had been outside by himself playing. And I found him. He had taken his own life in the woods. How does that happen? That's supernatural, isn't it? It's something that defies explanation. What makes that happen? I believe it's a natural process. And that if we understand how it works, that we could better interact with it. Okay, first of all, I want to say that I believe everything in the universe is natural, that there isn't anything that violates the laws of nature. So if there's something that is classified as supernatural, it's something that's happening that we simply don't understand what it is. When I was a child and I asked about that, I asked people that, in church and things like that. I went to church as a child. I don't go now. I am not a believer in anything supernatural in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so, and I fully believe that we evolved here, and that's a critical part of understanding this, because it's an evolutionary process that's happening. All right, what I want to say is we know we have 5 senses. We've got our eyes, nose, mouth, ears, and our sense of touch. And that we also, I'm going to suggest, have a 6th sense, but we don't understand this very well. It's actually an emotional sense that we have, and that emotional sense where the eyes pick up the light energy, the mouth tastes things, the nose smells, the ears pick up audible frequency. The central nervous system is what is responsible as the receiver, the transmitter receiver, as well as our own personal interface. That's where we get our own visceral feeling from. I feel good, feel bad, I feel scared, I feel like something's sneaking up on me. That's because there's another field there that we just don't know very much. And since it doesn't come in through the 5 senses, but it comes in through our mind through something that we're not aware of, it just looks magic. When in all reality, we evolved to sense danger. Not just see it, not just hear it, not just smell it, but to feel it creeping up on you. And some people are much better at that. And that field right there is what we're operating with. That is where the supernatural, all that magic, all that stuff comes in right there. So in my case, I'm going to say that what happened is that we have to say if something is moving in the universe, it's going to be of a frequency. I know people don't like that thought frequency sort of a thing. And what we're looking at is emotion has frequency. I should put it that way. Thought doesn't have frequency. Emotion has frequency. If you don't feel good, that's a bad vibe. If you feel good, that's a good vibe. We can call it that way. But if you're in a group of people and everybody is like worshiping and you get that super uplifted feeling, why is that? Imagine everybody's a little point of light, and you put one there, and then you put another, then you put another. And after a while, all these little points of light that have X amount of power get together and combine, and they're putting out massive amounts of light. Same as with the sound. If everybody was humming, and everybody hummed a little different, you put them all together, you add them all up, and it just gets louder and louder. So the same thing has got to be happening here. That is, you're getting people together that have a certain feeling, a certain emotion, and they get together and group up and work to elevate that. You can make it go higher, or you can go into a protest and feel so angry that you're going to do things you never would have done on your own. We can see that these fields are there working. We know that they're there. Well, people that have experienced those, you just look at that and go, how does that happen? That, there's people that say, oh, that's the power of God, Holy Ghost, something like that. You know what? It happens to everybody everywhere in the world, whether they believe in God or not. So there's something there that's more fundamental than supernatural. It's natural. However, because it's so misunderstood, that is the basis for all of the supernatural claims, the religious claims, the God, angels, demons, all of that, because of that field right there that is not understood. All right, this takes us full circle back to my experience with my brother. It's one of many experiences I've had in life, but this one's very, very specific, easy to look at. I can remember at that time, it was very tragic for me. There was a lot of emotion. There was a lot of turmoil. There was a lot of things not resolved that were never dealt with. It was just a time where people didn't know what to do. And I remember asking at church and hearing things like, oh, it was your brother's spirit talking to you. And I instantly thought, yeah, Larry never talked about, he didn't refer to himself in the third person. I heard Larry's dead. Larry wouldn't come up to me and say, oh, Larry's dead. That's like a George Costanza thing, huh? George doesn't like that. That's weird. No, so that didn't make sense. And I didn't say that then, but somebody else also suggested that it was God trying to warn me that I was about to run into that, which I thought that was ridiculous. It was an abusive home, and we had been praying a lot for the abuse to stop. We never got dealt with. So the God, Jesus, nobody ever came. At some point, you're sitting there going, this is not really working right. My brother took his life with a rope he thought he would go to heaven. So here's my answer then to what happened is looking back on it is that since he did that, I was inside the house. I was stuck at the kitchen table, helping my younger brother learn his ABCs. We're doing that rote A, B, C, D, E, F, G thing. But I want to go outside with my brother. It's a fall day. We'd come home from church. It was a November day, and the sun was out. It was a crisp, clear day. And but I would get in trouble. I couldn't leave. I couldn't go. I had to stay with my brother. But at some point, I'm feeling compelled to disobey. I don't know why. Something is I'm at the table. I'm not focused. My brother, Steve, has to go to the bathroom. So while he's gone, he won't tell on me. I sneak out the house. And at that time, that was in my life, that was worthy of getting a belt, not a whipping. I mean, not a swat, but a whipping. Mom would lose control, just absolutely lose it and go into a rage. And when it was done, when you got done, you stopped getting welted when it played out in her. That's when she quit. So that's what I was up against. I knew I was facing that, but I couldn't. Something was compelling me to go. And just as I'm reaching for the door, I hear the thoughts. It stops me in my tracks. It felt visceral. It was matter of fact. It was just Larry's dead. I stopped for, half a second, just paused there. I was reaching for the doorknob. My hand was just coming through my sleeve in my jacket I was pulling on. And that's exactly when it happened. But I thought, that's crazy. And I shook it off. I went outside in a few minutes and I found him. And indeed, he was dead. So I think what happened is that he was mentally, it was not instantaneous. There was a time where he was in anguish reaching out to me. And that was the connection. That was my nervousness. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to disobey. I didn't care. There was something there that I needed to go do, and that was happening. And I think that what happened is then that I knew, because of in that field, somehow I knew that the death had taken place. However, it was something that was never, it came into my awareness through the field. And the name Larry's Dead came from my brain. I knew Larry and I knew what dead was. So that's how I explained that it's a completely natural thing. However, it doesn't happen all the time and nobody else in the house experienced it. And if you turn around and say, I want to do, let's try that again, it doesn't work. It's a very random sort of a thing that happens. So my explanation would be that at some point in time, creatures are evolving, humans are evolving as well, before language even. We make noises, we scream and yell and grunt and, something like that. But that in a group, you can see now that there are brain types that are developed and they're not of equal proportion. There's the massive amount of brain types are a certain kind of brain type that honestly are the ones that are, I hate to say it. I don't even want to go there. They're going to be simpler brains wanting simpler things. They don't want to have a lot of answers and explanations. They just want to feel okay. That's the main part of the group that would have evolved to be the hunters, the foragers, the reproduction engine. You can see that same group now. Don't abort, but we'll throw them in jail, throw them in jail. Yeah, death sentence, all that kind of stuff. So it's really like, wow, that's weird to see that whole mechanism in place. That's the group of people that would be the center. When you're on the savannah, that's this massive group of people. That's the baby engine and the food engine right there. And the survival engine, the warrior engine being led by an alpha male. But then we are the small amount of introverted brain types that are more sensitive than the rest of the group. We are going to be more aware. We can't stand it in the group, so we're going to be driven to the outskirts of the group. So we're going to be first line of defense as well as the one that's separated from the group, kind of easy to get to. So you're going to have much higher awareness of the surroundings and a greater sensation and a greater feel. Your job is really to be kind of like the group. You're the one watching. You're like the first line of defense, maybe not the first line of defense, but the first warning. You're the one that senses what's coming up. Okay, so now what's happening today is that we have language and that field is still in play. It's still there, but it's being plugged in with all kinds of other things, and that all of the things that we get come from here. There's also a fair amount of people that I've talked to some people that I would listen to and go, wow, okay, there's a point where I understand that your personal experience is anecdotal like mine is. That's fine. But then they'll launch off into these things that are just like, yeah, come on, right? Yeah, that they talk to God and angels and all kinds of stuff like that. There's a point where people get really over the top with their stories and you don't even want to talk to them because they're just, if they're having that experience, it's only happening in their head. The rest of us can't have that experience. So what are you going to do? Say, gee, that person is special. They can do things that I am not. Now, there are people that are just more sensitive to the field. That's going to be a brain type. And what we're doing, everything is happening through the brain. The eyes are really, they're just like a lens. They don't actually see what they're looking at. What sees it is all those light images are recreated in the brain. What we smell, same way. Ever touch something hot and cold and it takes like a microsecond before you go, ooh, it doesn't happen instantaneously. This is a receptor, but the brain is the one that has to go, okay, that's good or not good. All right, so the central nervous system is functioning in that emotional field, and it's only supposed to bring joy and danger. Good, bad, joy, danger, or something like that. And so for me, the danger one was Larry. It was too late, of course, but it absolutely explains what happened to me in a way that I can say that's tangible. That's not supernatural. That's a natural process that if I evolved to see my environment, to smell my environment, to taste, I evolved to exist in my physical environment, to know what to do, to be afraid of. I think this is a difficult part for people to get to. You have to understand, and if you think about it, we are very fear-based creatures. All life would be, we don't want to die. If you can think of, I don't have fear, then does that mean you want to die? You don't care? None of that stuff is there. At some point in time, we're fear-based. And if you're sitting there on a day-to-day basis and everything is okay and your job is good and income is good and everything like that, you're not going to be feeling something coming after you. If you suddenly lost your job, that fear returns and you'd go, wow, okay, yeah, there is fear. Christianity is founded in that very same, because of that principle right there. Oh, guess what? Because of first sin, nothing you had any... you had no control over any of this stuff, but because you're born and because Adam sinned, you're going to die forever in hell unless you join the religion. Oh, okay. Boy, it hooks right in. Humans, every animal out there evolves with fear. It lives off of each other. It eats, hunts down, and attacks other life. That's how life works. Now we have evolved to the point where we now manage fields of animals that we utilize. We have animal husbandry at its finest. Okay, so I guess I got to be careful I don't get into the spiritual or religious material because they are nesting this very same teaching, but it's so hard to access. They know that this is happening this way, but you got a better flow in the Tao, or if Jesus says if you want your Father who sees in secret to reward you in secret, what the hell is that? Then forgive the odd against your brother. Resolve the stuff up here because we live continually through this massive judgment that we make up there. But that's because all of these are receptors, and because the mind, where all the perception happens, is what is referred to as the mind's eye or the third eye, or in this case, Jesus's mote in the eye. Clear the mote out of your eye. Okay, so, and then your Father who sees in secret will reward you in secret, which means resolve this stuff and you will flow better in life. The DVD, The Secret, does the opposite thing, honestly. It says, tell you forget about that stuff. It's just called so what? And you think about it and go, okay, well, how abused were you? How many times were you raped and molested and told what a worthless piece of shit you are over and over again? Just so what? Just let it go. You know what? If you can just say, so what, you're passed away, it didn't amount to very much. You have to work at that stuff, and the masters tell you to resolve it. We live through it cyclically. And therefore, we're in some kind of a field flowing. And when you change these things, the flow in the field changes. So you can begin to manipulate your way in life by understanding certain things about that field, that it is emotional and that our flow through life is based on, it's a number of things. I mean, we're in certain locations. There's things we don't have any control over, where you're born, things like that, what country, what state, whatever, what kind of a family. We have no control over that. But from there on, the things that we take on up here can be radically different. People raised in different ways have completely different beliefs, and what's there? They've just been programmed. You could take twins at birth from some location and separate them in the world, raised in completely different religions for 40 years, so they could get together later, if not knowing each other, and totally fight and argue over the religious variations. And they were born twins. It's the way the brain works. It's what we believe. There's a point where a seeking person is going to say, you know what? I know what I've been told and I know what I was taught. I'm going to let that go because I realize that was a foundation to come through that other people believe, but that's not really what there is. There's something beyond that. So you open your mind back up. When you have an open mind, you stop believing in what you've been conditioned to believe in locally from a religious perspective. You understand that if you were born somewhere else, you would have a different belief. And that tells you, my beliefs are something they don't have to be fixed. They're just what I was given. All right. So anyway, yeah, I'm getting off subject here with how it works. I'm kind of getting into a different lecture mode. But so I think that we evolved 5 senses to live in the physical world, but that sixth sense is also there, and that everybody can feel it to some degree. You might suddenly feel like this sense of being watched or something like that. We would be very keen to it back then. Also, it would be like fear, joy. You're sensing these fields. That's it. Today, we've got so much going on that we can't sense the field. However, you might be sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic feeling irritated. When you stop and ask yourself, I know it's happening. Why do I feel irritated? That's a goofy thing. And then suddenly you don't feel irritated anymore. And what you realize is that when you're not paying attention, you are just floating in the emotional field of a big bunch of anguish and, people that are, losing their patience and things like that. I might catch myself in a grocery store line sometime feeling impatient. And then I think, why? I'm not in any hurry. And you look around and, people are impatient. The lines are long and that kind of stuff. So to me, there's times where I realize I am feeling something that when I pay attention to it, it goes away. And I realize where did that come from? It's coming from my environment. You have to pay attention to those on your own, though. And you have to look at your own experiences. And again, there are things that you can't put a scope on this. It's like, how do you talk about it? And in this case, if you're talking about frequencies and receptors, it's like the eye works that way, the nose works that way, the mouth works that way, the ears work that way, the hands work that way. Why wouldn't the central nervous system work the exact same way? Only each one of them is in a different energy field, and this one is emotional. The central nervous system, though, is more special than the other ones. The other ones are just, I can see something that looks good. That doesn't make my eyes feel good. It makes my central nervous system feel good. It makes me feel good. I might hear something that's pleasing. It doesn't make my ears feel good. It makes my central nervous system feel good. All of the central nervous system is tied to that perception point, the mind's eye. How perception is how we feel. That's where spiritual comes from. That feeling, it's based in mind and emotion. Then it's not something that's different. It's something that's right next door. It's doing the exact same thing, except that since it's like coming in through awareness from inside, that it looks mystical. But it's actually coming from the environment through the central nervous system and up into the brain and into that eye of reception right there. That would be the easiest way to explain why supernatural works, but that it's not supernatural, but it is natural. All right. And of course, I've had other experiences, but I don't want the video to get longer than it already is. I would say that the most common thing today between me and my wife, and we're very connected and we're very much, I've resolved all that stuff from my past. I've understood there was a process, that I was part of a cycle, that my mother was next in line, that she was exactly raised that way, and that there's a mechanism that I had to escape. So I've worked on resolving those things and emerged beyond that, and life has changed radically as a result from my earlier days. So, and of course, there were steps along the way, improvements as I continued to change myself. Now the things that happen though are things that are, it's just odd stuff that we don't even laugh about it anymore. We'll be thinking of the same thing for dinner or something obscure. Maybe I'll be thinking of something. Haven't had this in a while, and she'll mention it. It's like, wow, that's kind of weird. And those are things that you could say are coincidence, but they happen so much between me and her, and between me and nobody else, that I feel this connection between her, and that we have this connection. We're sharing something at a closer level. I can sense when she's not feeling okay. She can sense when I'm not feeling okay. That those are things that are. Another one is like, maybe I'll be in the garage someplace, putting something away, putting a ladder away somewhere that I don't get to very often, and like right on a little shelf or something, there is her glasses, and I'll think, well, that's a weird thing. Their glasses are sitting right there, and I'll pick them up and bring them in, and she'll say, oh, I forgot, I didn't know where I set those down. Thank you for finding them. So stuff like that happens, and it's like, oh, that's kind of weird. You're looking for your glasses. I didn't know they were lost. I go do something that's obscure and walk right into them. That's the kind of stuff that happens, and we don't control it. Those are just little things here and there. So I'd be interested in hearing about your experiences, and put them below, or your thoughts. Again, this is only theory, but to me, it aligns with something that aligns with everything else that we see, that we know how it works. We know how energy works as far as what we can see, smell, taste, touch, all that. So, and then you look at it and you examine it enough. I mean, every time you see, or when you see something that makes you happy, it's always here that happiness happens. It's always the central nervous system. That is what is telling us the quality of the third eye, the perception, where all the receptors come together, and your brain makes choices and recreates images and utilizes memories as a part of all of that. The central nervous system tells us the state of that, as well as detecting the state of our environment. All right, at the risk of going on, I better end this. I'll post a link below to the sampled video. I'd love to hear from you if you have any ideas. What I have here is just a theory, and but it makes sense to me. It explains to me what happened to me. The more I thought about it, the more I figured this must be how it works, and why it would work. All right. Hope it was fun. Hope it was interesting. Remember, it's theory. See you in the next video.